you're fine. There's no blood. We just need to breathe.
Wow.
He said, now you need to look at me. So they made eye contact. He said, now just breathe in and breathe out. And they went back and forth like this for a little while, and I watched this child within a matter of a minute or two just completely stop crying, kind of brush himself off, and then they got up and went to play. And I just watched, from a few feet away. I never had to intervene. They worked through it all on their own.
Now, just so everybody knows, that doesn't happen every day at a Living Wisdom School. That is totally remarkable.
The same child actually did something similar the other day. Again, it's just a tool that he's really taken into himself, and he was helping another smaller child again.
But it works, and when kids can learn these things at a young age, and it doesn't have to be. It can be, that just shows that a large part of the learning, the curriculum, this is curriculum, happens during lunch and recess. That's one of the times the kids are most challenged to learn cooperation, because they're not a lot of times in directed, most of the time, it's not a directed activity. So boy, that is a real opportunity. Moving on to cooperation is, how do we deal with all the little upsets and things that happen at recess? How do we teach that everyone's part of the community, that we don't hurt others' feelings? And one of those ways is everybody gets to play. And Lorna's going to talk to us about that.
Everybody gets to play is a big one. It's a big challenge for all of the kids, because here in the smaller school environment, you have all the different ages of kids together, and everybody wants to play different things, and you have all those tools of maturity mixing on the playground there. And so one day we had a group of kids playing unicorns. It was a big deal in our girl faction there for a while, and they were out playing unicorns and running and had this whole scenario going about their unicorn fantasy and the whole world of the unicorns. And another child came along, and I was standing back and just keeping an eye on the thing, and suddenly there was quite this disruption about, no, you can't, yes, I can, no, it's not fair. And she came over and said, they won't let me play. And I said, no, of course they'll let you play. If you want to, they're playing unicorns. You want to play unicorns? And then the other kids came over and were saying, no, but she can't. And the whole deal was that, of course, this new one that came in, she had a whole different idea about how to play unicorns. Her idea about how to play unicorns was completely different. And they were saying, no, you can't do it that way. And so rather than trying to get them all to come together, I knew that there was going to be no way that they were all going to agree on how to do this. So I just said, that's okay. This is what happens, Sometimes there's unicorns from other places that come and visit. So why don't you be a unicorn? Usha, you be a unicorn from another island. You're from another island, and you do things differently. And you flew way over here to see these other unicorns, and you discover that they don't do things the same way you do. And so now you can meet and you can discover each other. And she took this. It took her a minute or two to sort of think about this, and said, yeah, and I think she came up with the name of her island where she came from. And then the other kids went, yeah, and we do it this way. And we don't eat other animals or something that was different. And the other girl said, well, I don't want to do it. And I said, no, but then you're visiting, and now you have to tell them how you do things here. And you can, and then they had to find out where to live, because they all had their little unicorn nest, where to live. So I said, and now you have to find your place where to live, and then you can invite these unicorns over to visit you and show them.
So this is a big one. How many of you have seen this at recess, where kids, it's usually a girl thing, where something starts and somebody else wants to play, and it's no, you can't play. Sometimes it can be a boy thing too, but, and any questions about handling that, or do you want to hear any more about that, or should we go on? About how Helen and Karen and Melissa and Lorna.
I would love to hear more about
Would you like to hear more? Can anybody think of something?
Well, one of the things that I've noticed often is that they just can't figure out how to do it. They have their idea about what they're doing. And sometimes there's an exclusion factor of this child. They don't want this particular child in there. But more often than not, it's because they have a vision of how this is supposed to go. And this other child is coming in and isn't fitting into their vision, wants to do it differently. And so usually what I wind up doing is trying to help them see and figure out ways where they can still do it. They can still play what they want to play, and yet they can still include and include other people in the way that they want to do it too. And so it takes, my technique, my particular technique, is just throwing out suggestions, like I did for the unicorn one. Well, what if that happened? Or what if that happened? And see what they pick up on. You know, if you, with boys, it's often the physical thing. It's they're playing ball or they're playing basketball. They're doing some game, and somebody comes in, and that child doesn't have the skills they think, or wants to do it differently, or you know, has their own idea. And so I've found that instead of saying this is the way we're going to fix it, which is my tendency sometimes, is to throw out suggestions and say, well, what if he, you know, what if you added one more team, or what if you put one more person behind the goal line, or what if we didn't do it that way? Would it be possible that somebody else could take on this other role over here? And just until they pick up and they think, oh, well, you know, maybe that might work. And it doesn't threaten their idea of how it's supposed to go. And then also they get a feeling that that's their idea. You've thrown it out there, but then they pick it up and they think they've solved it and that they've figured it out. So I found that helps a lot, you know, especially in the bigger group situations.
With the older kids, sometimes, again, in the physical sports, they can get frustrated with kids who aren't as good at it, or kids who, you know, want to, they perceive it as interrupt the game because they want to be in it. And so we just work with problem solving. If that consistently is happening at recess and they're consistently excluding people, then we talk about, well, what are some solutions so that no one feels bad, but you get your needs met. And usually what that has been usually what that has been, I don't know, that what we do is overlap the recesses so that everybody's not out there at the same time, so that the older kids know they're going to get their time to play wall ball or whatever it is intensely and challenge themselves in a way that would hurt the younger kids. So their needs getting met, but the little kids get to play when they're all out there together. So it's partly just modeling that attitude of it's essential that no one gets excluded and no one's feelings get hurt. And you know, sometimes that might be saying, okay, this is just a game for the older kids, or maybe we move the game to the parking lot, and the teachers of the primary tell their kids they can't go to the parking lot today, it's just for the older kids. But it's working out solutions and modeling with them how important it is that we find a solution that works for everybody. Any more on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question about what to do about play that is like warring factions, because it's an interesting dynamic that keeps happening again and again with our children, specifically my class of the 2 4th graders and the 6th grader and the 1st and 2nd that play together at recess, that almost always and inevitably turns into some kind of thing where someone's chasing someone, where there's sticks that turn into swords or guns or something, and this person's out to get that person, and they've built their fort, and you know, there's whole little warring things that go on.
One time I went on a field trip with one of our teachers who was 4th and 6th grade field trip, and it was a class, you know, they've been together a long time, so they get kind of be like siblings, you know, with small classes, 10 and 12 people that are together a long time. They know each other well and they're like brothers and sisters. So they love each other, but they fight like brothers and sisters. So on this field trip, we were staying at this state park, and we had one cabin for the girls and one for the boys. And we heard all this screaming going on, and so chaperones and I, going to check what was happening, discovered that the boys had sneaked over to the girls' cabin and stolen all their shoes. So when the girls got up and came outside to go play, no shoes. So that was funny, you know. And then the girls, because they gave them right back and everybody laughed, you know. And then the girls, of course, tried to do something back to the boys, and pretty soon, within 6 hours that evening, it was escalating, and people were really getting mad because their shoes were being hidden. They couldn't find their shoes. It was obvious that this was not working. Well, you know what, one thing we tend to do, and it's appropriate sometimes to say, absolutely not, this is stopping right now. But what's even better is when we can change the energy. Remember that it's not so much that you explain things as you give kids the experience of an energy change. And I just thought this teacher was brilliant because she talked to the dad of one of the boys who was on the trip and said, okay, they're wanting to interact with the girls as boys. They're wanting to they want to do something sneaky. Let's do something positive sneaky. So how about if you go to Safeway over in Redmond, and when you're out there getting groceries for tomorrow or whatever, how about you buy roses for all the girls, and the boys have to sneak to their pillows tonight while the girls aren't looking and leave one on every girl's pillow. Well, it's a little sexist in a way, but let me tell you, when those girls went up to their beds and found roses and finally found out how that had happened, that the boys had sneaked up there. And to see the boys, it was still a challenge. They were sneaking. They were getting something over on them, trying to do something they didn't know about. So it was taking that energy that they wanted, but bringing it up to a higher level. This requires so much creativity on the part of the teacher, but when you can do it, oh my gosh, the whole energy changed. And then the girls were trying to find things they could surprise the boys that were positive. So it's like, how can you take that energy, this desire they have to relate to each other, and do something positive? Something else that we do here to try to keep positive relationships between the older and the younger is the older kids do surprise things for the kindergarten. Now those two classes are in the same building, as you noticed, for the DVD. And by the way, this DVD is being made for the online classes. People in other places who can't come and take these classes can then see it. We post it on. So for the online people, we have two buildings here at Portland Living Wisdom School, and the office, the intermediate class, which is the older kids, and the kindergarten are all in one building. So there's some overlapping and meeting in the hall when you're going to the bathroom and meeting outside. And so one of the ways to help promote a relationship and a positive relationship between the two is to have the older kids do surprises for the younger kids. So sometimes it's been Valentine's Day. This year it was at Christmas time. They actually went over to a teacher's home. And Sean was there that day helping, weren't you? When you made cookies. And the class made cookies together to surprise the kindergartners. So it wasn't only making cookies, they made a label for each child, and so I think it was Sean telling me that some of them were so getting into decorating the label and writing the child's name on it, the ones who love that artistic stuff. The doers were in there, stirring the dough and all that, and all these different things. Was there something else they were doing?
No, playing.
Playing.
when they got their chance.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like they're all focused like adults, right? But the fact was, then they came back and they had a little bag of cookies and a beautiful name tag for each child, and their challenge is to sneak in the kindergarten while they're out at recess and leave them in there, and it said, Merry Christmas from the elves. And the coolest thing is the kindergartners practically never know who it is. So the experience of doing something positive, and it just changes, because that's the whole premise of Education for Life, is you give them experiences, and then hopefully you have them reflect on it and look back on it, and they learn something from it. Because then the teacher would talk about, well, how did it feel to get on something? Do you mind that they don't know that you did it and they didn't thank you? And the kids all realized, no, it was really fun. It was fun to surprise them. Yes, Mia?
I just wanted to share something that I kind of was inspired by a few of my co-teachers in that same area, because I was in a kindergarten classroom last year, and the boys and some of the girls sometimes too are very explorative, especially in the spring with energy. And one teacher was just like, well, look at animals when they're young. I mean, they're always butting heads, they're always finding ways to battle. And another teacher would really just channel it through putting emphasis on the warrior and what's the strength of the warrior and how can we explore that and give children opportunities to explore the positive side of the warrior.
Yeah, we've done that too, in having them, instead of battling each other, okay, let's battle the forces, the dark forces that are coming. How can you protect the little kids? because you can't just suppress that energy.
Yeah.
It's how can we draw it to a higher level. I think I talk about that somewhere in Calm and Compassionate Children too.
Not that I've been that successful. I mean, it's very challenging.
It's challenging, it's directional.
It is.
In the area of cooperation, and one of the skills of cooperation is recognizing each individual's unique contribution and right to be part of the community. And one way we do that is through celebrating birthdays. So you probably all have your own way of celebrating kids' birthdays at your schools, yes or no? Or what do you do, Kathleen?
I actually took Karen's idea when I was here years ago of making birthday books.
Oh, good. Okay, so Karen, will you share birthday books with us, please?
And I forgot to bring down the other thing, the little poster one. But, oh well. Okay, so what we do in our classroom is we make birthday books. We actually have a little routine for birthdays, and we start at circle time. We'll have the person, we have a special birthday
water
candle,
hot
and
in the
the
kitchen.
birthday person can choose to light the candle themselves or have someone else light it. And we sing happy birthday, we turn out the lights, which, we still have light coming in through the windows, but it's all part of the thing. And then we do a special little blessing for them afterwards, and they get a birthday sticker and so forth as well. But then we all get together and we brainstorm ideas about things that this child is particularly good at, or things that we especially appreciate about them. And then every student gets a piece of paper and they write down a few of these things. Birthday wishes for the birthday person, and something that they're especially good at, or something that they're especially appreciated for, and then make a colorful picture. So we did one of these sweet because when they're brainstorming, they'll think of things that they like about the person, but sometimes they're things that I would never have chosen. They'll say, oh, this person is very good at reading, for instance, and I'm thinking, they are? But that's their perception, and the person whose birthday it is, who's being spoken about, is always so pleased. So here's an example, and I just love what kids come up with. Sometimes they'll just take the words that are on the board, maybe it's like kind or helpful or good at drawing, and a lot of them are, you are kind, you are helpful. And we encourage them, if they can, to add on to that and give examples. In what way? But some kids just totally come up with their own thing, and I love this one. It says, happy birthday, you brighten my heart, you shine right above me. And then in her picture she's drawn, 7 candles on the birthday cake. And
Is there a name on it too, about it?
yeah, but since we're recording it, I thought I would mention that. And then, of course, they sign their name. Because there's first and second grade, and that encompasses huge range of capability. Here's somebody else's writing. You can see there's a good deal more involved there. You are a fun-loving friend. You have an enormous heart, great imagination, so forth and so on. And then the picture on the reverse side, much more sophisticated. And then we have the simpler version, you are awesome. But it's just very sweet. And these really helps them think about another person and their good qualities and just express that and share. Another thing that happens in the older class, and I'm sorry I forgot to bring my example of this down, but what they usually do is they'll have a piece of paper and they'll have a picture of the person on it, and they'll brainstorm just qualities, and they're beautifully written all around the edge, and then oftentimes there's little decorations and so forth added to the corners and so forth, just for people to get
Is the ideas, and this is not to say, well, here's your personal development cooperation curriculum. Of course, you've got to see what your kids need and do what your kids need, and also whatever happens in the classroom, you respond to that. But these are some great ideas that the teachers here use that have just been wonderful. And then I'm going to give you a copy of the primary progress report card, which shows how the different activities of the class are broken down into 6 curriculum areas. And this is, I forgot to show you all this when we were talking about, stickers for showing compassion or kindness or something like that. This is something similar, and this is something that Narani, Toby Morehouse, who is one of the senior teachers at Living Wisdom School in Nevada City, California. And back when I taught with her, which had to be earlier than '96, she had the kids go on a field trip. Do you see the names on here?
Yeah, it's just like
And she said that morning they left, they were bickering, they were complaining about everything, who got to ride where, which is a common one. Let me just tell you, if you go on a field trip, have a seat signed. If you assign the seats, you just get rid of a lot of problems right off the bat. Anyway, so she finally was so exasperated, she ran in, and this is just the creativity of teachers is so amazing. I never would have thought of this. She got some poster paper and she sat in the car while a parent was driving and made up this thing with the heart and the rainbow. I choose happiness. And she explained to the kids that every time on the trip that something didn't go the way you wanted or you didn't get what you wanted, if you chose to be cheerful anyway, you came up and you got to put a little mark by your name. And she said it just totally changed the energy of the trip with these kids. So I stuck this in my bag of EFL, Education for Life tricks. I've pulled it out a couple of times, and this morning when I pulled it out, or yesterday when I pulled it out, I noticed that it was when Erica was in her class. Erica's name is one of the names on here. So that's fun. Just that creativity of coming up with opportunities for the kids to practice the skills that we're talking about, rather than, you don't want to just tell them about them. Like those lessons I read you on compassion with heroes of compassion. Well, that's good to talk about. It does bring it into our consciousness, but more importantly is talking about how do we show compassion to the kid who's being left out on the playground? How do we show compassion to someone whose mom's in the hospital, and that sort of thing.
So let's move along now to the more academic areas of the curriculum. I left some handouts on everybody's chair, and one of them is, well, actually these are come from every part of the curriculum.
One of them is a lesson from the curriculum that Karen has completed this fall that she started writing down last summer. Karen has multiple wonderful thematic units that she teaches. Oceans, dinosaurs, fairies and friends, festivals of light, and bears. So our first actually produced for sale Education for Life academic curriculum is right here. We're selling this for $10. It's got, those of you who take the online training, you did get it online. It's got 7 lessons, but it's a unit that can take about a month to complete, because the lessons, some of them go for more than one day. And this is lesson 3 that you're getting here, which gives a wonderful illustrations of teaching intellectual skills, like how big are bears, through experience and through the feelings. And we'll come back to that. Then you got another lesson plan on, this one was turned in by a student in the online teacher training last year. Is this on your desk, a chair? Mm-hmm. And it's a cooperation one. Because in the class, those of you who are taking the class, and I think there's 3 of you who are taking the class here, you have to do 2 lesson plans for the final class, and one can be any academic area, or maybe you don't think, if you don't think of music as academic or PE, it could be any of those subjects. But then also there has to be one under the cooperation or personal development. And this is one turned in by last year by a student on teaching cooperation, an activity that gives kids a chance to experience cooperating. And we're actually going to do this activity after lunch. Then the third handout I left on your desk was a list of the skills for living. And again, this is part of our curriculum. All the schools have these, and we keep them in mind as goals. It's a big list, isn't it? It'd be great if each of us had all of these, much less the kids. But it is something that we keep in mind. These are the directions, and recognizing these in children. All of you know that we have an awards night in which a child gets recognized for some quality character trait that they have shown. You don't have this. This is a curriculum produced from scratch. Well, now wherever you are, you're going to decide what do your kids need to learn. Another thing that enters into the curriculum is what are you good at? Of course, what do you love? What are you enthusiastic about? Because you teach that the best. In fact, I think it says in Education for Life that the teacher should love the subject they teach, or in the case of younger children, love childhood itself. And without one of those loves, how can you really convey to the kids that enthusiasm and excitement of learning? So people will say to me, well, tell me about the yoga. Does every class have yoga in Living Wisdom School? And I said, well, it depends on the teacher. If the teacher does yoga and loves yoga, yes, they do. But mandating that a teacher teach yoga, it's not going to be something that the kids will light their fire, you know. Now, there's some subjects we do, of course, every teacher does have to teach, but even that, maybe not. Maybe we can find another, if they're fabulous in everything but math, we'll go find a math teacher to get that teacher to teach, right? But this is examples of academic resources that fit in, or that have really great ideas that fit into the Education for Life philosophy. And just to give you one example today, it was Rose that introduced me to these. Are you all familiar with these, some of you? No. These are so exciting. I'm excited because I just learned about them. This series right here is all science, written by Dan Green, but it's created by someone whose last name is Simon. I think it's Simon Basher. Biology, Life as We Know It, Rocks and Minerals, Astronomy, Physics. There's one on the periodic table. They started out being in the sciences. They're so popular that now they're expanding, and they have one on punctuation, which I can't wait to get out of the library, but we do have a poster of it on the board that you can look at. There's one coming out this summer on grammar. I can't wait for that one. But what's so wonderful is they take these totally intellectual subjects and give it a feeling element. For the feeling years, is this wonderful or what? These are the different, let's see. I should have marked a place where one would be. Okay, so here's obsidian. So obsidian is a stunning volcanic glass important to Native Americans. It's sharper than steel. And then there's a whole description of it written by this character. So it's in the first person, so the child has somebody to identify with. Black as night and dangerous to know. I'm a sharp, pointy individual. My frosted glass surface gives away nothing about my makeup. You can tell by the way I fracture that I have no internal crystal arrangement.
Yes. Just to share how I used them recently, we did a human body unit, and I was just coming in one morning a week and doing supplementary activities and learning with the kids. And we used the biology, and after kind of the more quiet, inward sacred, more sacred time, I would read it like you would read a story in circle, but the different body parts that they had just learned to reinforce what they learned, and they loved it. They asked for it every day. Can we read it again? Can we read it again? And it really, what I noticed, it just reinforced what they had already learned in such a fun way. And they loved the pictures of the lungs. That was their favorite.
So, why is this so effective and so great? We know, because you're Education for Life experts, you know it's because it's bringing the feelings into a subject, and the feeling years makes it alive for the kids. Oh, I was going to tell you that I just started teaching communication to the third, fourth, fifth grade in January, second term. And we started out with biographies because I knew they hadn't done any biographies, and so they all got, I actually went to the library and picked out people like Rachel Carson for the scientific kid, and Beatrix Potter for the artistic kid, different ones of people I thought they would be interested in. And it was fine. They read them, they did reports, it was fine. But I was thinking about, okay, what do I want to do next with this group? And I said to them something about the primary classes theme. And I said, what's that thing they're doing? Trying to think of what the term was that she was using. And one of the kids said, mythical beasts? And another kid said, like griffins and dragons. And I mean, just, I'm exaggerating. But I could feel their little hearts and minds going over to the primary classroom. And I'm thinking, oh, these kids' hearts really need a little bit more fantasy, more fanciful things than this cut and dried reality here. I said, because I read a lot of kids' books and I knew a lot of dragon books existed, I said, well, do you guys want to do dragon books next? I mean, the room erupted. Yes, yes, yes. So we have been reading dragon books. I mean, I'm teaching them reading, writing, and grammar. But we're doing it in the context of reading books that have dragons as characters. And I've learned so much. I didn't know there were all these different kinds of dragons. There's this whole mythology that's been created about. I only knew about dragons that were fire-breathing that you tried to go out and kill, or the more contemporary literature dragons who are usually friends of mankind helping fight evil, which of course that's what the kids all wrote their stories about, mainly because I required it to be either that kind of dragon or a fairy dragon. And it has just been unbelievable. And they will read a book that's 5 grade levels ahead of them in reading level for a little while because they're just so motivated. It's just been so wonderful. And this, I want to draw your attention to the statement from Education for Life. There's much to be gained from learning to approach any new subject, as it were, from within, from its core rather than its periphery. And one way to accomplish this feat is for the student to be involved totally in whatever subject he or she is given to study. Indeed, it's partly in the rigid compartmentalization of subjects that formal education loses so much of its potential relevance. So the thematic approach, which is known throughout the field of education, again, it's if you've ever done it, you'll see the how this applies in the classroom. The kids, it's so much better to go into one subject deeply, whether it's a scientific subject like the human body or rocks and minerals, and then put that aside for a month and go into whatever the next subject, which maybe we're going to hear about bears in a minute. So the kids, they're just like consumed by that subject because it's so motivating. And that's how real life learning is. Think of a skill or a subject you've learned as an adult. Like for some of you it might be astrology or flower essences or speaking another language or playing a musical instrument or something you've learned to do. Might be Education for Life. And think about in your study of that and your learning of that, I bet 9 out of 10 of you were doing it because you had a use for it. And that was what made it motivating to you. Right? And even though everything a kid learns, they're not going to have a use for it tomorrow, we could substitute that usefulness with a subject they love. And I shouldn't go into it too much because Narani and those of you who watched the video on lesson planning have heard her talk about this at length. So now I'm going to let Karen share a little bit with you on just the bear lesson, number 3 from the Bears and Facts and Fiction curriculum.
So don't look at it. Don't look at it. Because, well, I mean, it wouldn't be the end of the world. I'm going to start out by giving you a little sticky note, and I want you to write your name on this. So if you'll just write your name and pass it.